Chapter 1. The exhaustion of explaining yourself. There is a kind of tiredness that comes from always trying to be understood. It is not physical tiredness. It is not the tiredness that comes after work. It is not the tiredness that disappears after one night of sleep. It is the tiredness of repeating your heart to people who keep hearing only what they want to hear. You explain your intention. They hear an excuse. You explain your boundary. They hear rejection. You explain your silence. They hear attitude. You explain your pain. They call it drama. You explain your distance. They call it pride. You explain your growth. They call it change. And slowly, you begin to feel as if you are standing in front of a locked door, knocking with every honest word you have, hoping someone will finally open. But some doors are not locked because you failed to knock properly. Some doors are locked because the person inside does not want to open. This is one of the hardest lessons to accept. Not everyone who listens is trying to understand. Not everyone who asks questions is seeking truth. Not everyone who says, "Explain yourself," is ready to receive your explanation. Some people only want more words from you so they can find something else to use against you. When you are kind-hearted, this can be difficult to recognize. You assume that if you explain clearly enough, people will understand. You assume that if you speak gently enough, people will soften. You assume that if you show them your side, they will stop judging. You assume that if you prove your heart, they will finally see it. But understanding is not only about how well you explain. It is also about whether the other person is willing to see beyond their own story. You can speak with honesty and still be misunderstood. You can speak with softness and still be accused. You can speak with proof and still be doubted. You can speak with patience and still be turned into the villain in someone else's mind. That does not always mean your words failed. Sometimes it means their perception was never neutral. A person who has already decided who you are will often twist everything you say to fit the decision they already made. If they want to see you as selfish, your boundary becomes selfishness. If they want to see you as cold, your silence becomes proof. If they want to see you as wrong, your explanation becomes manipulation. If they want to see themselves as innocent, your truth becomes an attack. This is why over-explaining becomes painful. You are not only trying to communicate. You are trying to fight against a story that someone is emotionally attached to. And when a person is attached to a story, facts often feel like threats. They do not want your explanation, because your explanation may disturb the version of reality that protects their ego. So they interrupt. They assume. They twist. They bring old things. They change the topic. They focus on your tone instead of your truth. They find one imperfect word and ignore the meaning behind it. Then you try harder. You make the message longer. You choose your words more carefully. You apologize for things you did not do just to keep the conversation peaceful. You soften your truth until it almost disappears. You explain the explanation. You defend the defense. You keep trying to prove that you are not the person they keep describing. And at the end, you feel empty. Not because you had nothing to say, because you gave too much of yourself to someone who was not listening with fairness. This is where many people lose their peace. They do not lose it because someone misunderstood them once. They lose it because they keep returning to the same misunderstanding, hoping the next explanation will finally set them free. But sometimes freedom does not come from being understood. Sometimes freedom comes from accepting that you are allowed to be misunderstood. That sentence may feel uncomfortable at first. You are allowed to be misunderstood. You are allowed to let someone think the wrong thing. You are allowed to let someone tell an incomplete story. You are allowed to let someone judge from limited information. You are allowed to stop correcting every false version of you that exists in someone else's mind. This does not mean the misunderstanding does not hurt. It can hurt deeply, especially when it comes from someone you cared about, someone who knew your heart, someone who saw your effort, someone who once received your kindness, someone who should have known better. When those people misunderstand you, the pain is different. It feels like betrayal. You think, after everything, how could they see me like that? You think, how could they forget my heart so quickly? You think, how could they believe the worst about me? You think, how can they act like I did not care? And because the pain is so deep, you feel the urge to explain again. You want to send the message. You want to write the paragraph. You want to prove the truth. You want to show evidence. You want to remind them who you were. You want to make them understand what they are choosing not to see. But before you reach for another explanation, pause. Ask yourself, have I already explained this? Has this person shown the ability to hear me fairly? Am I trying to create understanding, or am I trying to escape the discomfort of being misunderstood? Will another explanation protect my peace, or will it give more energy to the same cycle? Am I speaking from dignity or from desperation? These questions matter, because not every urge to explain is wisdom. Sometimes it is anxiety. Anxiety says, fix their perception quickly. Dignity says, stay rooted in who you are. Anxiety says, they must understand you. Dignity says, you must not abandon yourself trying to be understood. Anxiety says, send one more message. Dignity says, you have already spoken enough. There is a point where explaining becomes begging. Not begging for money. Not begging for attention. Begging for someone to see you with fairness. And your heart deserves better than begging for basic fairness. The right people may need clarification sometimes, but they will not require endless proof of your heart. They will ask to understand, not to accuse. They will listen to your meaning, not search for your mistake. They will make space for your humanity. They will not turn every difficult conversation into a courtroom where you are always on trial. When someone truly values you, they may misunderstand you in a moment, but they will not be committed to misunderstanding you forever. They will be curious. They will be careful. They will care about the impact of their assumptions. They will want truth more than they want victory. But some people do not want truth. They want control. They want a reason to blame. They want a version of you that makes their choices easier to justify. They want your silence to mean guilt. They want your boundary to mean cruelty. They want your distance to mean arrogance. They want your growth to mean betrayal. If they can make you the problem, they do not have to face their own behavior. This is why trying to be understood by everyone can become a trap. You may spend years polishing your image in the minds of people who benefit from seeing you incorrectly. And while you are busy trying to fix your image in their mind, your own life remains waiting. Your goals wait. Your peace waits. Your energy waits. Your healing waits. Your future waits. All because someone, somewhere, thinks something wrong about you. But a life cannot be built around correcting every misunderstanding. There will always be someone who misreads your heart. There will always be someone who judges your boundary. There will always be someone who does not know the full story. There will always be someone who hears a rumor and believes it. There will always be someone who sees your growth as disrespect because they preferred the version of you who had no boundaries. If your peace depends on every person understanding you, your peace will never be stable. Because people see through their own wounds, their own fears, their own ego, their own insecurity, their own history, their own need to feel right. You cannot control the lens through which someone sees you. You can only control whether you keep performing for that lens. This is the beginning of freedom. You stop performing. You stop over-explaining your no. You stop defending your silence. You stop rewriting your truth to make it more acceptable. You stop shrinking your boundaries to avoid being called difficult. You stop trying to look innocent to people who are determined to call you guilty. Instead, you return to yourself. You ask, did I act with integrity? Did I speak honestly? Did I treat people with respect? Did I apologize where I truly needed to? Did I keep my boundary without cruelty? Did I choose peace instead of revenge? Did I do what aligned with my values? If the answer is yes, then let that be enough. Not everyone will clap for your integrity. Not everyone will understand your decision. Not everyone will respect your silence. Not everyone will agree with your boundary. But you must stop living as if your inner peace requires their approval. Your peace is not a public vote. It is a private responsibility. And part of that responsibility is learning when to stop explaining. Chapter 2. Why some people do not want to understand. One of the most painful realizations in life is that some people are not confused because they lack information. They are confused because clarity would require accountability. They say they do not understand. But sometimes they understand enough. They understand that your boundary means you are no longer easy to control. They understand that your silence means you are tired of repeating yourself. They understand that your distance means their behavior had consequences. They understand that your growth means they can no longer access you the same way. But instead of respecting it, they turn it into something else. They call your boundary attitude. They call your peace coldness. They call your healing pride. They call your self-respect selfishness. They call your distance punishment. Why? Because if they named it correctly, they would have to face what caused it. It is easier for some people to misunderstand you than to admit they hurt you. It is easier to call you dramatic than to examine the pain they dismissed. It is easier to call you sensitive than to admit they were careless. It is easier to call you changed than to admit they benefited from the version of you who tolerated too much. Misunderstanding can become a defense mechanism. A person may misunderstand you because understanding you would break the story that protects them from guilt. If they accept that your boundary is reasonable, they may have to admit they crossed a line. If they accept that your silence is exhaustion, they may have to admit they ignored your words for too long. If they accept that your distance is self-protection, they may have to admit they created an unsafe space. If they accept that your growth is healthy, they may have to admit they were attached to your weakness. That is difficult for the ego. So the ego edits the story. It says they think they are better than us. It says they changed. It says they are acting cold. It says they are ungrateful. It says they are overreacting. The ego rarely says, maybe I need to look at my part. This is why you can explain the truth repeatedly and still be misunderstood. Because the issue is not always missing information. Sometimes the issue is emotional resistance. You are trying to give truth to a person who is protecting themselves from truth. And when a person is protecting themselves from truth, your explanation feels like an attack. Not because it is an attack. Because it threatens the version of the story where they are innocent and you are the problem. This is why silence can become necessary. Not because silence proves you are right, but because speaking to someone who only wants to defend their illusion will drain you. You cannot force a person to be honest with themselves. You can present the truth. You can speak clearly. You can explain once or twice. You can offer a sincere conversation. But you cannot make someone receive what they are committed to rejecting. There is a difference between someone who does not understand and someone who does not want to understand. Someone who does not understand asks with humility. Someone who does not want to understand asks with accusation. Someone who does not understand listens for meaning. Someone who does not want to understand listens for ammunition. Someone who does not understand may need time. Someone who does not want to understand keeps moving the goalpost. Someone who does not understand says, "Help me see." Someone who does not want to understand says, "Prove it again." When you learn this difference, you stop giving unlimited explanations to people who are not asking in good faith. Good faith matters. A good faith person may disagree with you, but they will not twist everything. They may be hurt, but they will still try to hear. They may need clarification, but they will not make you feel like your humanity is on trial. They may challenge you, but they will also examine themselves. A bad faith person does not seek understanding. They seek advantage. They want to win the conversation. They want to make you emotional. They want you to contradict yourself. They want one sentence they can use to dismiss everything else. They want to pull you into defense so they can avoid reflection. Once you recognize bad faith, continuing to explain becomes self-betrayal. It is like pouring water into sand. No matter how much you pour, nothing holds. You leave the conversation exhausted, while the other person leaves with more material to twist. This is why discernment is important. Not every conversation deserves your full emotional energy. Some conversations are bridges. Some conversations are traps. A bridge creates movement. A trap creates repetition. A bridge helps both people understand. A trap keeps you defending your right to feel. A bridge ends with clarity. A trap ends with you apologizing for having a boundary. A bridge may be uncomfortable, but it is constructive. A trap feels familiar because you keep saying the same thing in different words. When a conversation becomes a trap, step back. You do not have to attend every argument you are invited to. You do not have to prove your maturity to someone acting immaturely. You do not have to keep speaking because someone keeps pretending not to hear. You are allowed to say, "I have explained this already. I am not going to keep repeating myself." You are free to see it how you choose. I know my intention. I am at peace with my decision. These sentences are simple, but they are powerful. They close the door without slamming it. They communicate without begging. They protect your dignity without attacking. Some people will not like this. They may say you are avoiding accountability. They may say you are running away. They may say you have no answer. They may say your silence proves them right. Let them. This is where your strength is tested. Because the ego hates being misrepresented. The ego wants to correct every false statement. The ego wants the final word. The ego wants to make sure no one walks away thinking they won. The ego wants everyone to know the real story. But peace asks a different question. What will this cost me? Will correcting this person bring peace, or will it pull me deeper into chaos? Will proving my point change their heart, or only feed the cycle? Will defending myself protect my dignity, or expose my pain to someone unsafe? Will one more message create clarity, or create more exhaustion? Peace is not always found in being fully understood. Sometimes peace is found in not needing to be. This does not mean you should never explain yourself. There are moments where explanation is healthy. If you hurt someone, explain and repair. If someone you trust is confused, communicate with care. If a relationship matters and both people are willing, have the conversation. If your silence would be unfair, speak with honesty. The lesson is not never explain. The lesson is stop explaining to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. There is a difference. Healthy explanation comes from clarity. Over-explanation comes from fear. Healthy explanation respects both people. Over-explanation abandons you. Healthy explanation creates understanding. Over-explanation tries to force acceptance. Healthy explanation ends when the truth has been communicated. Over-explanation continues because you are desperate for the other person to approve of your reality. When you feel the urge to explain, ask yourself, am I trying to communicate, or am I trying to control how they see me? That question will reveal a lot. Because sometimes we call it communication, but deep inside, we are trying to control perception. We want them to see our goodness. We want them to regret judging us. We want them to admit they were wrong. We want them to validate our side. We want them to stop carrying a false story. But you cannot control perception. Even if you explain perfectly, someone can still choose the version that serves them. The freedom comes when you stop needing their version to match your truth. You know what happened. You know what you meant. You know what you gave. You know what you survived. You know what your silence cost. You know how many times you tried. And sometimes that knowledge must be enough. Not everyone deserves the full story. Some people only deserve the version your boundary gives them. Not because you are cruel, because access to your inner world must be earned by respect. The deepest parts of you should not be handed to people who keep mishandling the surface. Your explanations are energy. Your emotions are energy. Your memories are energy. Your pain is energy. Your truth is energy. Do not keep giving sacred energy to careless hands. Some people are not safe places for your heart. They may be familiar. They may be connected to your past. They may be family. They may be friends. They may be people you once trusted. They may be people you wanted to understand you more than anyone else. But familiarity does not equal safety. A safe person does not require endless proof that your feelings matter. A safe person does not punish you for being honest. A safe person does not collect your words to use against you later. A safe person does not turn every boundary into a personal attack. A safe person does not make you feel guilty for protecting your peace. When you recognize someone is not safe for your truth, silence becomes wisdom. Not the silence of fear, the silence of self-protection. This silence says, I will not keep opening my heart where it keeps being mishandled. I will not keep explaining my boundary to someone who benefits from crossing it. I will not keep defending my healing to someone who preferred my wounds. I will not keep shrinking my truth to make others comfortable. This is not arrogance. This is maturity. You are learning that peace sometimes requires accepting that people will have incomplete information about you. They may only know one chapter. They may only hear one side. They may only see your boundary, not the pain that made it necessary. They may only see your silence, not the countless times you tried to speak. They may only see your distance, not the repeated disrespect that pushed you there. Let them have the incomplete story. You do not have to chase every missing detail. People who truly care about truth will seek it with humility. People who only want drama will use the incomplete story anyway. Your job is not to perform innocence for every audience. Your job is to live with integrity. And integrity is quieter than reputation. Reputation is what people say. Integrity is what you know. Reputation changes with mouths. Integrity remains with choices. If you live only for reputation, you will become a prisoner of every opinion. If you live from integrity, you can survive misunderstanding without losing yourself. This is the foundation of inner peace, knowing who you are even when others narrate you incorrectly. Chapter 3. The Quiet Power of Silence. Silence can feel weak when you are used to defending yourself. It can feel like surrender. It can feel like losing. It can feel like letting the other person win. It can feel like allowing the wrong story to stand. But silence is not always weakness. Sometimes silence is the strongest thing you can choose. Because there are battles where speaking gives away more power than staying quiet. When you respond to every accusation, you teach people that your peace can be summoned by their misunderstanding. When you defend every rumor, you teach people that your energy is available to every voice. When you correct every false story, you teach people that your time belongs to anyone who questions you. But when you choose silence with self-respect, you create a boundary without needing a speech. You say without saying, "My peace is not available for every argument. My truth does not need to be performed for every person. My dignity is not on trial. My energy has limits." Silence becomes powerful when it comes from fullness, not fear. Fearful silence hides. Powerful silence chooses. Fearful silence says, "I am afraid to speak." Powerful silence says, "I have nothing left to prove here." Fearful silence carries resentment. Powerful silence carries clarity. Fearful silence waits for permission. Powerful silence walks away with self-respect. This distinction matters, because not all silence is healthy. If you are silent because you are afraid to be honest, that silence may become a wound. If you are silent because you believe your needs do not matter, that silence may become self-abandonment. If you are silent because you want to avoid all discomfort, that silence may become avoidance. But if you have spoken clearly, if you have explained enough, if you have tried with sincerity, if the same person keeps twisting the same truth, then silence is not avoidance. It is completion. There is nothing more to add. Some conversations do not need another paragraph. They need an ending. And endings are not always dramatic. Sometimes the ending is simply not replying. Sometimes the ending is leaving the room. Sometimes the ending is saying, "I have explained this already." Sometimes the ending is no longer giving emotional access. Sometimes the ending is letting people think what they want while you keep building your life. This is difficult because the mind hates unfinished stories. It wants everyone to know the truth. It wants the record corrected. It wants justice immediately. It wants the other person to admit what they did. It wants the audience to understand your side. But peace often requires accepting that some stories will remain unfinished in the minds of others. They may never know the full truth. They may never apologize. They may never admit they misunderstood. They may never correct what they said. They may never come back and say, "I see it now." And still, you must be free. Your freedom cannot depend on someone else's honesty. Your healing cannot wait for someone else's confession. Your peace cannot require someone else's emotional maturity. If it does, they still control you. Silence helps you take that control back. Not because silence changes them, because silence changes your participation. You stop feeding the argument. You stop giving fuel to the misunderstanding. You stop giving your nervous system to people who enjoy disturbing it. You stop making your peace dependent on a response. This is the power of non-participation. Not every fire needs your water. Some fires only grow when you pour yourself into them. There are people who do not want resolution. They want reaction. They want you emotional. They want you defensive. They want proof that they still have access. They want to pull you out of your calm so they can say, "Look, this is who you really are." Do not give them that version. Do not let someone else's lack of control become an invitation for you to lose yours. You can be misunderstood and still remain steady. You can be accused and still not explode. You can be judged and still not perform. You can be talked about and still keep your peace. This is emotional discipline. It is not easy. At first, silence may burn. You may write the message and delete it. You may imagine the perfect reply. You may rehearse what you would say if they were standing in front of you. You may feel your chest tighten when you think about the false version of you people may believe. Let that feeling move through you. Do not confuse the discomfort of restraint with the need to react. Sometimes the body is simply detoxing from the habit of defending. If you have spent years explaining yourself, silence will feel unnatural. It may feel like leaving yourself unprotected. But over time, you will realize that not every explanation protects you. Some explanations expose you. They expose your wounds to people who will not hold them gently. They expose your intentions to people who want to twist them. They expose your energy to conversations that have no purpose. They expose your peace to people who already showed they do not respect it. Silence can protect what over-explaining keeps exposing. A simple rule can help. Explain once with clarity. Explain twice if the relationship matters and the person is willing. After that, observe. Do not keep explaining the same thing to someone who keeps showing they are not interested in understanding. Observation will tell you more than repetition. Watch how they respond to your boundary. Watch whether they take responsibility. Watch whether they listen for meaning. Watch whether they twist your words. Watch whether they care about repair. Watch whether they only care about winning. Behavior is information. Let it inform you. Another reason silence is powerful is that it reveals who people are without your interference. When you stop explaining, people show what they were going to do with the story anyway. Some people will reflect. Some people will soften. Some people will ask with sincerity. Some people will apologize. Others will create more drama. They will exaggerate. They will gather supporters. They will mock your silence. They will assume guilt. They will try to provoke you. Let them reveal themselves. Your silence is not only a boundary. It is a mirror. It shows you who respects your peace and who only respected your availability. Some people will not understand your silence because they are used to your over-explaining. They were used to having access to your emotional labor. They were used to watching you rush to fix every misunderstanding. They were used to you carrying the burden of clarity for both sides. They were used to you apologizing just to reduce tension. They were used to you proving, defending, softening, chasing. When that stops, they may feel uncomfortable. They may call your silence cold. They may call it pride. They may call it disrespect. They may call it avoidance. But sometimes people call your peace a problem because they benefited from your chaos. Do not let their discomfort pull you back into the old role. You are allowed to grow beyond the version of you that explained until exhaustion. You are allowed to become unavailable for conversations that break your spirit. You are allowed to choose silence where words have become waste. This does not mean you become unreachable. It means your words become intentional. You speak where there is respect. You explain where there is openness. You repair where there is accountability. You clarify where there is good faith. You listen where there is maturity. And where there is none of that, you conserve your energy. This is not punishment. It is wisdom. A wise person understands that energy is life. Every hour spent defending yourself to the wrong person is an hour not spent building your future. Every night spent replaying an argument is rest you did not receive. Every paragraph sent to someone committed to misunderstanding you is attention taken from your own healing. Every emotional battle you enter has a cost. Ask yourself, is this worth the cost? Many things are not. Some people are not. Some opinions are not. Some rumors are not. Some accusations are not. Some arguments are not. Some misunderstandings are not. You do not need to respond to everything that tries to pull you. You can see the bait and not bite. You can hear the false story and not perform. You can feel the urge and still choose peace. That is power. Quiet power. The power to remain connected to yourself while others misread you. The power to let people be wrong without making their wrongness your emergency. The power to know that your life is not a courtroom and your soul is not a defendant. When you begin to practice this, your energy returns. At first slowly, then deeply. You notice you have more space in your mind. You stop rehearsing conversations with people who are not listening. You stop needing the final word. You stop monitoring what everyone thinks. You stop feeling responsible for every version of you that exists outside your control. You begin to feel light. Not because everyone understands, because you no longer require everyone to. This is the gift of silence. It gives you back to yourself. Chapter 4. Living free from other people's stories. Every person you meet carries a story about you. Some stories are kind. Some are incomplete. Some are wrong. Some are shaped by love. Some are shaped by jealousy. Some are shaped by pain. Some are shaped by one moment they misunderstood. Some are shaped by what someone else told them. You cannot control every story. Even when you live carefully, someone may misunderstand. Even when you speak honestly, someone may misquote. Even when you act with kindness, someone may focus on the one time you were tired. Even when you grow, someone may prefer the old version of you. Even when you choose peace, someone may call it pride. This is life. To live freely, you must accept that your image in other people's minds will never be fully under your control. There will be versions of you that do not match who you are. A version created by someone who only knew you during your worst season. A version created by someone who benefited from your lack of boundaries. A version created by someone who heard one side. A version created by someone who needed you to be wrong so they could feel right. A version created by someone who never asked your truth. And if you chase every version, you will lose the real one. The real you cannot spend a lifetime running behind false versions of you. At some point, you must let the false versions exist. Not because they are fair, because your life is too valuable to be spent correcting every unfair thing. Living free means choosing substance over image. Image asks, how do they see me? Substance asks, how am I living? Image asks, what are they saying? Substance asks, what am I becoming? Image asks, do they approve? Substance asks, am I aligned with my values? Image is fragile because it depends on others. Substance is stable because it depends on your choices. When you live from image, every opinion becomes a threat. When you live from substance, opinions may hurt, but they do not own you. This does not mean you stop caring completely. You are human. Words can hurt. Judgment can hurt. Being misrepresented can hurt. But you stop letting hurt become control. You stop making every misunderstanding a command to explain. You stop making every opinion a mirror. You stop making every critic a judge. You stop making every false story a crisis. You come back to the deeper question: who am I becoming when no one is watching? That is the question that matters. Because people can misunderstand your words, but your repeated choices shape your character. People can misread your silence, but your peace still protects you. People can call your boundaries selfish, but your nervous system knows when you finally feel safe. People can label your growth as pride, but your future will know it was survival. You do not need to convince everyone that you have changed. Just change. Live the proof. Let your life become the evidence. Not through performance, through consistency. Consistently choose peace. Consistently speak with integrity. Consistently keep boundaries. Consistently stop explaining where there is no respect. Consistently return to your values. Consistently stop shrinking to be liked. Over time, the people meant to recognize your growth will recognize it. And the people committed to misunderstanding it will continue. Either way, you will be free. This freedom requires emotional courage. Because being misunderstood activates old fears. The fear of rejection, the fear of abandonment, the fear of being seen as bad, the fear of losing connection, the fear that maybe if someone thinks wrong about you, it means you are wrong. But someone else's misunderstanding is not automatically a revelation. Sometimes it is projection. People often judge from the parts of themselves they have not healed. A controlling person may call your boundary controlling. An avoidant person may call your honesty pressure. An insecure person may call your confidence arrogance. A guilty person may call your truth aggression. A person who used your kindness may call your self-respect coldness. Their label may reveal more about their lens than your character. Do not wear every label people place on you. Some labels are not yours. You can examine feedback without absorbing projection. This is important. A mature person does not reject all criticism. Sometimes people will tell you something true, and your growth requires listening. You may have hurt someone. You may have communicated poorly. You may have reacted from pain. You may have been unfair. You may need to apologize. You may need to learn. Growth requires humility. But humility is not the same as accepting every accusation. Listen with honesty. Reflect with courage. Apologize when needed. Repair where possible. Learn from what is true. Then release what is not. Do not carry false guilt just because someone speaks with confidence. A person can be loud and still be wrong. A person can be emotional and still be unfair. A person can be hurt and still misread your intention. A person can believe something strongly and still not know the whole story. Your responsibility is to examine, not to absorb everything. Ask yourself, is there truth here? Is there something I need to own? Is this feedback coming from someone who has shown wisdom and fairness? Is this criticism helping me grow or only trying to shame me? Does this align with my values and repeated behavior, or is it a distortion? These questions keep you balanced. You do not become defensive. You do not become a sponge for every opinion. You become grounded. Grounded people can listen without collapsing. They can apologize without hating themselves. They can reject false accusations without becoming cruel. They can let people be wrong without needing revenge. This groundedness is what makes you free. Another part of living free is accepting that silence may cost you certain relationships. When you stop over-explaining, some people will leave with the wrong idea. Let them. If a relationship survives only because you constantly manage their perception, it is not safe for your peace. If someone needs endless access to your emotional labor to treat you fairly, that fairness is too expensive. If someone only believes the best about you when you are performing innocence, they do not trust your character. Real connection has room for misunderstanding, but it also has room for repair. If someone never gives you that room, the relationship may already be too fragile to hold the real you. Let fragile connections break if they require you to keep breaking yourself. That may sound harsh, but it is healing. Because not every loss is a loss. Sometimes losing access to people who constantly misunderstand you is the beginning of gaining access to yourself. You gain your mornings back. You gain your mental space back. You gain your emotional energy back. You gain the ability to breathe without waiting for someone else's approval. You gain the quiet confidence of knowing you do not need to explain your existence. And as you become freer, your relationships become cleaner. You stop building connections through over-explaining. You stop bonding through emotional labor. You stop staying where you are constantly misread. You stop feeling guilty for needing respect. You stop mistaking being tolerated for being understood. You begin to choose people who listen differently. People who ask before assuming. People who care about your meaning. People who do not weaponize your vulnerability. People who can hear difficult truths without turning everything into blame. People who respect your silence without creating a story to punish you. These people exist. But to make room for them, you must stop exhausting yourself with those who refuse to understand. Your energy has a direction. If it is always flowing toward defense, it cannot flow toward creation. Create your life. Build your routines. Strengthen your mind. Heal your body. Work on your purpose. Develop your gifts. Protect your peace. Love the people who love you with care. Let your actions become your language. When you live well, many false stories lose their power over time. Not all of them. Some people will still talk. Some people will still judge. Some people will still prefer their version. But their story will become smaller compared to the life you are building. That is the best response. Not a paragraph. Not a public defense. Not a dramatic correction. A life lived with clarity. A life that says, I know who I am. I know what I chose. I know what I survived. I know where I am going. And I will not keep stopping my future to argue with people committed to misunderstanding my past. This is freedom. Not freedom from being judged. Freedom from being controlled by judgment. Not freedom from being misunderstood. Freedom from needing to correct every misunderstanding. Not freedom from pain. Freedom from turning pain into endless explanation. You become a person who can be misread and still remain whole. You become a person who can be criticized and still reflect calmly. You become a person who can be talked about and still keep building. You become a person who can walk away from the courtroom of other people's opinions and return to the temple of your own inner peace. That is where your power lives. Not in convincing everyone. In staying aligned with yourself. Ending. You do not need everyone to understand. There will be people who never understand why you changed. They will not understand why you became quieter. They will not understand why you stopped explaining. They will not understand why you no longer respond the same way. They will not understand why you chose distance. They will not understand why the old access is gone. Let them misunderstand. You did not become this version of yourself to remain readable to people who only understood you when you had no boundaries. You did not heal just to keep proving your pain to people who ignored it. You did not survive confusion just to spend your life explaining your peace. Some people will only understand the version of you they benefited from. The over-giving version. The always available version. The version that apologized to keep peace. The version that explained until exhaustion. The version that feared being disliked. The version that carried the emotional weight for everyone. When that version leaves, they may call it pride. But you will know it is self-respect. They may call it coldness. But you will know it is protection. They may call it silence. But you will know it is peace. They may call it change. And you can say, quietly inside yourself, yes, I changed. I changed because the old way was costing too much. I changed because I cannot keep abandoning myself to be understood. I changed because my peace matters. I changed because I finally learned that not every opinion deserves a defense. I changed because I am no longer available for conversations that only drain me. This is not a loss. This is a return. A return to your own voice. A return to your own center. A return to your own dignity. A return to the part of you that does not need applause to know its worth. So the next time you feel the urge to explain yourself to someone who has already shown they do not want to understand, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, have I spoken enough? Have I honored my truth? Is this conversation safe? Will more words bring peace, or will they only feed the cycle? Then choose wisely. Sometimes the most powerful response is not another sentence. Sometimes it is silence. Sometimes it is distance. Sometimes it is continuing your life without waiting for permission. Sometimes it is letting the wrong story exist while you live the right life. You do not need everyone to understand you. You need to understand yourself. You need to live with integrity. You need to protect your peace. You need to stop handing your emotional energy to people who turn it into confusion. Let them think what they want. Let them talk. Let them assume. Let them create the version they need. You keep becoming. You keep healing. You keep building. You keep choosing peace. You keep walking with the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding. Because when you finally stop explaining yourself to the wrong people, you will hear something you may have forgotten. Your own inner voice. And it will tell you, you are allowed to be free. See you in next life-changing video.